Yo, I'm Justin Anulam, and you're just in time for a talk on Pokemon's accuracy stat. So technically, what I'm wanting to talk about today is an idea that I've sort of had for trying to mitigate what I see as a bit of a problem, which admittedly is sort of subjective, with the accuracy and evasion stat, as well as kind of the crit stat, although I don't really have a problem with the way that Pokemon handles crits. It's just I'm wanting to borrow from it in order to, again, quote-unquote, in my opinion, fix a bit of an issue that I have with accuracy and evasion. So, one issue that I have with evasion specifically is that by virtue of having a move just completely miss, you end up having basically a wasted turn. And while that's definitely something that a lot of moves are well balanced around, for instance, the one-hit KO moves like Horn Drill and so forth, those really don't work outside a scenario where you either land the hit and boom, the effect is they just completely die, or you totally miss and you get nothing for the turn. It was a big risk, big reward. And so if you'll bear in mind, as I'm describing some of these changes, there would be some moves that I would probably add to their effect, whatever, language would be needed to basically, even though I'm changing the overall system of accuracy, some moves like the one-hit KO moves would probably need to have effects added to enforce their current version, even though I would be changing how accuracy works in general. So I keep alluding to that. Let's go ahead and get into it. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up the accuracy chart. This is currently how the stages work, and I say currently, it's from Bulbapedia listing all of the listing all of the previous generation mechanics as well. The actual fractions, there's the word I was looking for, at the bottom are a little bit weird to, at first glance, but the long and the short of it is that the way that right now accuracy works is by adding a 1/3 to every stage, so that's why the top number keeps going up, even though it's always over a third as you go up. They don't just subtract a third, however, when you go below 0. Instead there, you can see that the 3 remains the same, and they're just increasing the number below, which I believe creates a decreasing, to where a decreasing benefit, such that the more evasion you get, that first chunk of evasion is the largest chunk you're going to get for any stage. So the difference between stage +1 and +2 for evasion is significantly bigger than once you're at 5, going to 6 is kind of really small. The difference between 3/8 and 3/9 is not remotely as big. And so I do like that conceptually, to where you do get your best benefit from evasion right at the beginning. The problem I sort of have is with evasion on the whole, and I'm pretty sure that anyone who has ever gone up against an NPC or even a player that relies very heavily on things like minimize or double team, it's less a question of strategy at that point, and it just becomes prolonging the battle. It just becomes not fun. And to a degree, you could solve my complaint mostly by just, not having AIs try to use it more than maybe once or twice. Because also, as I pointed out there, the AI or you, if you try to use these evasion moves, you're going to get the most benefit out of them after only boosting them like twice. Or once if you're using Minimize, which is a sharp increase. The AI is never satisfied at that point. And so it continues to, on the one hand, kind of waste turns because, like I said, beyond 2 stages or so, you're really starting to you'd be better off using an actual move. And it's not super helpful to you. It's just going to be annoying to the other player. It's just making any of their moves that weren't 100% accurate basically worthless. Well, except for when they're not, because if they do land, then, long story short, that's why I'm looking to change this. So, a large part of what I'm wanting to sort of do here is more or less do away with the entire concept of whether the move lands at all or not as being accuracy and evasion. So essentially do away with accuracy and evasion, but keep the names, and do away with crit, not because we're actually getting rid of it, but because crit will now be accuracy. And that would end up being confusing within the game, having to, refer to things accuracy, even though what they're now meaning is their crit chance. And so then what's evasion? That's sort of a new idea that I'm wanting to propose here, that I realize, even as I've tried to think of some of the current moves that either work, like I said, like the one-hit KO moves would not really make sense with this system. And there's probably some others where not, weighing hit with good effect versus total miss, that this makes sense for some moves. And replacing the total miss with what I'm about to propose would be would be too much better. Like, for instance, the one-hit KO moves. So, to get at what I'm proposing to replace it, the sort of term I've come up with is a glancing hit, so it's meant to be sort of like the inverse of a critical hit, which is part of why, like I said, I'd be replacing the accuracy and evasion, but not removing them. I'd just be I'd be keeping the names and most of the concept. It's just now what they do is, on the accuracy side of things, that's how you increase your chance to crit, and then below that 100 accuracy point is increasing your chances of getting what I'm calling a glancing blow. So, right now in Generation 8, a critical hit will boost the power of a move by 1.5. And so if I just take that and, like I said, invert it, a glancing blow could just reduce the damage by 0.5. I'm not entirely sure, though, if that's not a little too much damage reduction, because, like with a crit also still takes into effect whether or not the move's getting the same type attack bonus, whether or not the move is super effective, doubly super effective, yada yada yada, on and on. And a lot of those factors can make it to where a crit in one scenario will be significantly less impactful than a crit in a really vulnerable scenario. So, if you, again, flip that, there's the potential for this glancing blow concept to, like, if it's stacked with a Pokemon that's already getting a resisted hit, so on and so forth. I'm not totally sure how the numbers would work out, whether or not 50% is maybe too strong, maybe too weak, maybe it needs to be even more of a reduce. I'm not totally sure, but some level of reduced damage so that it sort of mirrors how the crit works, but also an effect of critical hits that you've maybe not encountered, because in a regular playthrough it's sort of unlikely that you're going to run into this scenario. If the opponent has any defensive buffs and or you have any offensive reductions, those are both ignored by a crit. So if you've been growled at or charmed, your crit is still going to ignore that. If it's an attack, special attack, just follow, the train of thought. And same for a defense raise on the opponent. If they've used Iron Defense or Amnesia and you're using either a physical or special attack following that pattern, you're going to just completely ignore that raise on top of the fact that you're getting the 0.5. So, again, similarly, conceptually, I would have this glancing blow invert that, because now we're talking defenses. Now, if the opponent has gotten a raise in attack and they use a physical attack on you, but it lands a glancing blow, it not only reduces it by, again, the 50%, however much, I'm not totally sure, it also ignores the fact that they had raised stats. And similarly, like if they've used Screech on you and then are using an attack, normally that's 2 defense stages lower, so you'd take a lot more damage, but if it's a glancing blow, not only is it resisted, you also don't take any bonus. You pretend that your defense is at its normal level. So, and again, because of all those kinds of caveats, and the fact that a lot of the time, certainly from what I've seen in competitive, a lot of the biggest one-shot blows that would really be affected by this a lot do tend to happen when the opponent has a lot of stat buffs and or you have debuffs. So this would change that dynamic pretty significantly, which is why the numbers would be really critical, and unfortunately I'm just not that well versed to know. 50 I think would be a decent starting point, and then you would probably need to tweak it from there. So, a couple of the other little issues that immediately sort of pop up with the idea that you're removing the idea of a move missing entirely with it hits, it just does reduce damage. There would be a lot of small, minor issues, like, for instance, secondary effects. So, a fire move that has a burn chance has no burn chance if it totally misses, right now. With this system of it being a glancing blow, I'm not entirely sure. It would if you left the ability for secondary effects to happen, even though it was a glancing blow, after all, crit has no interaction with that at all, then this would be an improvement. Well, this would be more than is currently existing, such that a move that would have missed will now just be a glancing blow. So first off, more damage will be being done under this system than previously. Not only that, if a glancing blow doesn't protect you from secondary effects, then all of a sudden a lot of those secondary effects that previously it would have just missed, so there was no chance at all, now there'd be a lot more of those chance rolls, which technically in a search to reduce the amount of RNG, I would in a way be increasing some of it. So, but again, like I said, a crit doesn't interact with that at all, so I don't know whether or not that would be an idea that would need to be, cut out, that no secondary effects can only happen if it's a normal hit or a crit. They are protected, you're protected from them if it's a glancing blow. Another thing would be any move that normally has increased crit chance would in this case need to have that sort of baked in directly into its actual accuracy. And I'm going to go ahead and pull up now the chance of crit table, and there's, as you can see, significantly fewer stages currently, and that would probably need to be somewhat kept, but somewhat, I'm not entirely sure again on the numbers here. With accuracy, if I bring that table back up, the final, once you're at 6 stages, you're multiplying your accuracy by 3, which is huge, and makes sense from an accuracy standpoint, because accuracies can be as low as, I think 30 is about the lowest they normally get. Technically, again, the one-hit KO moves use some weird formulas for their accuracy, but in such a case as a 30% accuracy move, multiplied by 3 is still a chance at a miss currently, and under this system it would be a chance at a glancing blow. So how that would interact with crits, I would lean toward the idea that essentially whenever the move maxes out at 100% crit chance, which would be in this case like 200% accuracy, you could hypothetically keep getting stages beyond that, because there'd be moves that you'd be pulling up their really low accuracy out of the range of glancing blows and into the range of being able to land critical blows. But perhaps because of them, they wouldn't ever be able to, necessarily get to 100% guaranteed crit, whereas that many stages would be totally unnecessary for a move that's already either increased crit rate or has a, moderate or, baseline crit. And part of the issue here also, you'll notice from the crit one, all moves have a baseline chance to crit, and I wouldn't be really wanting to get rid of that. So that would mean that sort of the baseline accuracy would need to actually be 105% rather than 100, which would be a little bit less satisfying, and I am a little bit open to the idea that maybe the accuracy and evasion, instead of being on a scale from 0 to 200%, should be pictured some other way. So, long story short, there's a lot of the numbers specifically about this idea that I've not really worked out well, and realize I could use a lot of suggestions from you guys. One other element that is kind of a problem to one degree, but also kind of, I would argue maybe not, is the idea of status moves. Because status moves, like for instance, Hypnosis, is entirely based on the fact that it's got a pretty low hit rate. So you have a reasonable chance of missing. And what is you can't crit a status move, so what would a glancing blow be? Or, well, so what would their accuracy now, giving them the chance to crit and giving them the chance to glancing blow, what would that even mean for them? An idea I've had that, again, numbers-wise, I'm not totally sure on, I'm thinking would affect their duration. So right now, a move like Sleep happens between, I think, 1 and 5 turns, and that's randomly generated when the move hits, because it's also, got a chance to miss in every case except for Spore, or if you've lowered the opponent's evasiveness, raised your own accuracy, so forth. So, under this system, what I'm thinking is that you maybe would standardize how long the sleep would actually last under a normal circumstance, and then under a glancing, and then under a crit, it would be like just the 1 turn versus like 5 turns guaranteed if it's a crit. And the sort of partial issue with that is that under all these circumstances, that means that if you use Sleep Powder, which right now is meant to be balanced around the fact that it's got a reasonable chance to miss, now you'd at least be guaranteed it's going to put them to sleep. And to a degree, I don't think that's necessarily a problem, but I do acknowledge it could become one, and I don't know. The easiest answer would be to say that this change to glancing and crits would only be applied to damaging moves, and that purely status moves would still, maintain the old order of if they have less than 100 accuracy, that's a chance of fully missing. So, as you can see, there's some areas where this idea really starts to fall apart, and there's a lot of reason why I'm sure the current system is the way it is. So, I'd love to hear what some of your thoughts are about maybe some ideas that could tweak this a little better, or other entire archetypes of stat changes like this that you've thought of. So, thanks for watching, and we will catch you next time. Yo, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, like and leave a comment. Subscribe and hit the bell icon if you want YouTube to let you know when more uploads arrive. I've put links in the description for if you want to follow the channel's Twitter or Facebook, as well as a link to the channel's Patreon if you'd like to support the channel. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.